I'm writing this at 3:47 a.m. on my 7th consecutive day awake. My hands are shaking so badly I keep having to retype words, and twice now I've hallucinated spiders crawling across my keyboard. I know they're not real. At least I'm pretty sure they're not real. That's the problem now. I can't always tell anymore. I need to document what happened before I lose whatever's left of my mind. If you're reading this, please, for the love of God, never participate in a sleep study, especially not one that pays $15,000 for 3 weeks of minimal risk research. It started 6 months ago when I was drowning in student debt and working 2 jobs that barely covered my rent. I saw the flyer at the University Medical Center. Healthy adults needed for sleep research study. Compensation up to $15,000. Contact Dr. Sarah Venn at the Hargrove Institute for Neurological Sciences.
$15,000.
That was 3 months of rent, a massive dent in my loans, maybe even enough left over for a decent meal that wasn't ramen or dollar store pasta. I called the number that same day. The Hargrove Institute wasn't part of the main university campus. It sat about 20 miles outside the city, a brutalist concrete building that looked like it had been dropped into the middle of a pine forest and forgotten. The GPS had trouble finding it, and I almost turned back twice, but the thought of that money kept me going. Dr. Sarah Venn met me in the lobby. She was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, with dark hair pulled into a severe bun and eyes that seemed to look through you rather than at you. Everything about her was crisp and professional, the white lab coat, the clipboard, the way she shook my hand with exactly the right amount of pressure. "Thank you for coming, Marcus," she said, leading me down a hallway lined with doors that had small circular windows, like you'd see in a psychiatric ward. "Let me explain what we're studying here." She took me to a small office and gestured to a chair. The walls were covered in brain scans, charts showing waves and patterns I couldn't begin to understand. "We're investigating the neurological mechanisms of sleep, specifically the brain's transition between waking and sleeping states," she explained. "Current research shows that sleep and wakefulness aren't binary states but exist on a spectrum. What we're trying to understand is what happens in that liminal space, that boundary between conscious and unconscious." "Okay," I said, trying to sound like I understood. "And what would I have to do?" "You'd stay here at the facility for 3 weeks. We'd monitor your sleep patterns, conduct various tests, and occasionally try different interventions to see how your brain responds. Nothing invasive, no drugs, no surgery. Just monitoring and some sensory exercises." "Sensory exercises?" "Controlled stimuli designed to observe how your brain processes information during different sleep stages. Sounds, images, that sort of thing. All completely safe." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You'd be compensated $15,000 upon completion of the full study. We provide all meals, private accommodation, and entertainment during your downtime." I should have asked more questions. I should have wondered why they were paying so much for something completely safe, but all I could think about was that money and how it would feel to finally have some breathing room in my life. I signed the consent forms without reading them properly. There were dozens of pages, and Dr. Venn kept helpfully pointing to where I needed to initial and sign, chatting pleasantly about the facility's history and their groundbreaking research. I caught words like waiver and unforeseen complications, but nothing that set off real alarm bells. God, I was such an idiot. I moved in the following Monday. My room was smaller than I expected, more like a college dorm than a hospital, single bed, small desk, TV with basic cable, and a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in. The door locked from the outside, which they explained was for data integrity, so I wouldn't wander during testing periods. The walls were that same institutional beige that seems to exist only in medical facilities and DMV offices. There were 12 of us total, all in our 20s and 30s, all there for the money. We met during the first group orientation. I remember their faces so clearly now, though at the time I barely paid attention. There was Jessica, a grad student with kind eyes and terrible posture from too many hours hunched over books. David, a laid-back guy who kept making jokes about easy money. Rachel, who just lost her job and needed to make rent. Tom, who kept to himself mostly. And others whose names I'm ashamed to say I've forgotten, though I can still picture their faces. The first few days were exactly what Dr. Venn had described. They attached electrodes to our heads before bed. The whole setup looked like something from a 1950s sci-fi movie. They monitored our sleep stages, woke us up at various points to ask about dreams, showed us images and played sounds to test our responses. It was boring, honestly. Wake up, eat breakfast in the common area, go through various cognitive tests, have free time, dinner, more tests, sleep, repeat. The food was actually pretty good, and they had books and magazines in the common room. Some of us started playing cards in the evenings. Jessica and I talked about books. David taught us a complicated dice game he'd learned in college. It felt almost like a weird vacation that ended on day 8. Dr. Venn gathered us in the common room after breakfast. She looked excited in a way that made me uncomfortable, like a kid about to pull the wings off a fly just to see what happens. "We're moving into the next phase of the study," she announced. "Up until now, we've been establishing your baseline sleep patterns. Now we're going to begin the intervention phase. This will involve some more intensive monitoring and some experiences that might feel unusual. But I assure you, everything is perfectly safe." "What kind of experiences?" Tom asked. "We're going to be exploring the hypnagogic state, that transitional period between wakefulness and sleep. Some of you might experience vivid imagery, strange sensations, even mild hallucinations. This is completely normal and temporary. These experiences will help us understand how the conscious mind releases its grip and allows sleep to occur." That night, they gave us all pills before bed. "Just mild sedatives," the nurse said, "to help ease you into the proper state." I remember lying in bed, feeling the medication take hold, my limbs growing heavy. The electrodes were attached as usual, but there were more of them this time, covering more of my head. A screen had been mounted on the wall opposite my bed, currently dark. As I started to drift off, the screen flickered to life. At first, it just showed simple shapes: circles, squares, spirals rotating slowly. Then the images became more complex. Fractals that seemed to fold in on themselves. Patterns that hurt to look at, that made my eyes water and my head throb. And then faces. Not normal faces. Faces that were almost right but subtly wrong. Eyes too far apart. Mouths that curved at impossible angles. Expressions that conveyed emotions I didn't have names for. I wanted to look away, but my head felt pinned to the pillow, too heavy to move. The faces kept coming, faster and faster, overlapping and merging. And then I heard it, a sound like static that slowly resolved into whispers. I couldn't make out words, just the cadence of voices speaking urgently about something terrible. I must have fallen asleep eventually because I woke up screaming. The nurse who rushed in seemed unsurprised. She checked my vitals, adjusted something on the monitoring equipment, and told me it was a normal reaction. "Some subjects experience increased dream vividness," she said in a tone that suggested she'd given this explanation before. "It will stabilize." At breakfast, I wasn't the only one who looked shaken. Rachel had dark circles under her eyes. Tom kept staring at nothing, his coffee going cold in front of him. David tried to make jokes, but they fell flat. "Did anyone else see the faces?" Jessica asked quietly. We all had. Dr. Venn assured us this was expected. The hypnagogic state often involves pareidolia, seeing faces in random patterns. We're simply amplifying this natural tendency to better understand the mechanisms involved. A few more nights and your brains will adjust. She was lying, or maybe she believed it. I honestly don't know which is worse. The second night of intervention was worse than the first. The images on the screen were more disturbing. Buildings with impossible geometry, landscapes that seemed to exist in too many dimensions, and those faces, always those faces, watching us with expressions that made my skin crawl. But the worst part was when I actually fell asleep. My dreams had always been normal, forgettable things. But that night, I dreamed I was awake. I dreamed I was lying in that bed, in that room, unable to move, while something stood in the corner. I couldn't see it clearly. It was like a blind spot, a darkness my eyes refused to focus on. But I could feel it watching me with an attention that was predatory and patient. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't respond. All I could do was lie there while this thing slowly approached the bed. And I knew with absolute certainty that if it touched me, something fundamental about my existence would change in a way I couldn't survive. I woke up gasping, covered in sweat, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst. The corner was empty. The room was empty. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been there, and maybe still was, just outside the range of my perception. 3 more people dropped out after that night. They came to breakfast with packed bags, saying they didn't care about the money, they just needed to leave. Dr. Venn was disappointed but not surprised. She reminded us that we'd signed contracts, that leaving early meant forfeiting all compensation, that we'd come this far and it would be a shame to quit now. 9 of us stayed. The next week blurred together in a nightmare that I'm still not sure was entirely real. Each night, the images on the screen became more disturbing. Each night, our dreams became more vivid, more terrible, more real. And each morning we looked worse, hollow-eyed, shaking, jumping at shadows. Jessica started talking about the Watchers. That's what she called them, the things we saw in our dreams. She said they weren't really part of our dreams, but were using our dreams as doorways to watch our world. When I tried to argue that they were just hallucinations caused by whatever Dr. Venn was doing to us, Jessica grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "Then why do we all see the same ones?" she hissed. "Why do we all describe the same thing in the corner? Why does David draw the same symbols I see, without us ever comparing notes?" I didn't have an answer. David stopped making jokes. He started drawing obsessively on every surface he could find. Napkins, the backs of his hands, the walls of his room when they took away his paper. The symbols didn't look like anything from any language I recognized, but looking at them made my head hurt, made me feel like I was on the verge of understanding something I really didn't want to understand. On day 15, Rachel didn't come to breakfast. I woke up gasping, covered in sweat, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst. The corner was empty. The room was empty, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been there, and maybe still was, just outside the range of my perception. 3 more people dropped out after that night. They came to breakfast with packed bags, saying they didn't care about the money, they just needed to leave. Dr. Venn was disappointed but not surprised. She reminded us that we'd signed contracts, that leaving early meant forfeiting all compensation, that we'd come this far and it would be a shame to quit now. 9 of us stayed. The next week blurred together in a nightmare that I'm still not sure was entirely real. Each night, the images on the screen became more disturbing. Each night, our dreams became more vivid, more terrible, more real. And each morning we looked worse, hollow-eyed, shaking, jumping at shadows. Jessica started talking about the Watchers. That's what she called them, the things we saw in our dreams. She said they weren't really part of our dreams, but were using our dreams as doorways to watch our world. When I tried to argue that they were just hallucinations caused by whatever Dr. Venn was doing to us, Jessica grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "Then why do we all see the same ones?" she hissed. "Why do we all describe the same thing in the corner? Why does David draw the same symbols I see, without us ever comparing notes?" I didn't have an answer. David stopped making jokes. He started drawing obsessively on every surface he could find. Napkins, the backs of his hands, the walls of his room when they took away his paper. The symbols didn't look like anything from any language I recognized, but looking at them made my head hurt, made me feel like I was on the verge of understanding something I really didn't want to understand. On day 15, Rachel didn't come to breakfast. The images on the screen that night weren't just disturbing. They were wrong in a way that went beyond visual discomfort. They seemed to move in directions that shouldn't exist, to show me angles and perspectives that my eyes weren't designed to process. Watching them felt like my brain was being pulled apart and reassembled incorrectly. And then, for the first time, I heard Dr. Venn's voice over the speaker in my room. "Don't fight it, Marcus. Let yourself sink into the images. Let them show you what's always been there, just out of sight. The Watchers have been waiting so long for someone to finally see them clearly. Don't you want to understand? Don't you want to know the truth about what consciousness really is?" I wanted to scream at her, to tell her she'd gone completely insane, but my mouth wouldn't work. The medication had left me paralyzed again. able only to watch as the images filled my vision and something in my mind began to crack open. That's when I saw it clearly for the first time. The thing in the corner wasn't separate from me. It was me, or rather, it was the part of me that existed in that space between waking and sleeping, the part that lived in dreams, the part that could perceive the watchers because it was related to them somehow. We all had this shadow self. Dr. Venn had awakened it through her intervention, and now it was trying to pull the rest of me through to wherever it existed. I felt myself splitting, my consciousness trying to exist in two places at once. My body in the bed and somewhere else, somewhere dark and vast and filled with watching things that were so happy to finally be seen clearly. The next thing I remember is waking up on the floor of my room 3 days later. I'd lost 3 days, just gone, vanished from my memory like they'd never existed. The electrodes were still attached to my head, but the wires had been ripped out. My fingernails were broken and bloody. I'd carved symbols into my arms with them. David's symbols, the ones that hurt to look at. The door to my room was open. The facility was silent. I stumbled out into the hallway, and that's when I saw Jessica's room. The door was ajar, and through it I could see her sitting on the floor, rocking back and forth, staring at the wall. She was whispering something over and over, too quiet for me to make out. When I said her name, she turned to look at me, and her eyes were completely black. Not just the pupils, the entire eye, from corner to corner, like someone had filled them with ink. "They're so beautiful," she whispered. "Why can't you see how beautiful they are? They've always been here, Marcus. We just had to learn how to look." I ran. David's room was empty, but the walls were covered floor to ceiling in those symbols, written in what I really hoped was paint. Tom's room was locked, and I could hear him laughing behind the door, a high-pitched giggle that went on and on without pause for breath. The common room had been transformed into something else. The furniture had been pushed against the walls, and in the center of the floor, someone had drawn a massive version of David's symbol using what looked like burned pieces of wood. Or maybe it was just shadows. It was hard to tell, because looking at it made my eyes water and my head swim. Dr. Venn was there along with 2 of the nurses. They were standing around the symbol and they were changing. Their shapes seemed unstable, like I was seeing them through water, like they were only approximately human and that approximation was failing. "Marcus," Dr. Venn's voice was delighted. "You're awake. You missed the breakthrough, but there's still time. We finally did it. We found a way to perceive the other side clearly, to invite the watchers through. Isn't it wonderful?" I didn't answer. I just ran for the exit. The front door was locked. All the exterior doors were locked. The windows were reinforced glass that wouldn't break no matter how hard I hit them. I was trapped in that building with whatever Dr. Venn and the others had become, with Jessica and her black eyes, with Tom's endless laughter. I eventually found an emergency exit in a back hallway that someone had forgotten to secure. I ran into the forest, ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out, ran until I reached the main road and flagged down a car driven by a terrified woman who probably thought I was on drugs. The police went to investigate the Hargrove Institute 2 days later. They found the building abandoned. No Dr. Venn, no test subjects, no nurses or staff. Just empty rooms and walls covered in symbols. They found evidence of the study, paperwork, equipment, my signatures on consent forms. But there was no record of the Hargrove Institute ever being approved for any kind of sleep research. Dr. Sarah Venn's medical license was real, but she'd lost her position at a university hospital 3 years ago after concerns about her research methods. The other test subjects, some of them have turned up. David was found wandering a highway 50 miles away, drawing his symbols in the dirt with a stick. He's in a psychiatric facility now, completely nonverbal. Tom was discovered in his apartment, where he'd apparently been living normally, except his neighbors reported hearing laughter at all hours. Jessica hasn't been found. Neither have 4 others. And me? I made it out physically intact. But the thing Dr. Venn awakened in that facility, that shadow self, that part of me that exists in the space between sleeping and waking, it's still there. I can feel it, especially when I start to drift off. That's why I can't sleep anymore. Because every time I close my eyes, every time I feel myself starting to slip into unconsciousness, I see them, the watchers. They're not hallucinations or dreams. They're real, and they exist in that liminal space that Dr. Venn forced us to perceive. And now that I've seen them, now that they know I can see them, they won't leave me alone. They wait for me in sleep. I can feel them gathering on the other side, patient and hungry, waiting for me to let my guard down. So I stay awake. I drink coffee until my hands shake. I take cold showers. I blast loud music. I do everything I can to keep from falling asleep, because I know what's waiting for me on the other side. It's been 7 days now. The hallucinations are getting worse. I see things moving in my peripheral vision. I hear whispers that I know aren't really there. Sometimes I can't tell what's real and what isn't, but I know the watchers are real. And I know that eventually, despite everything I do, I'm gonna fall asleep. I don't know what will happen then. Maybe I'll wake up afterward, like before. Maybe I won't. Maybe the thing that wakes up will only look like me, the way Dr. Venn and the others only looked human at the end. I'm writing this as a warning. If anyone offers you money for a sleep study, don't take it. If you hear about the Hargrove Institute or Dr. Sarah Venn, run. And for God's sake, don't try to perceive what exists in that space between waking and sleeping. Some doors are meant to stay closed. Some things are meant to remain unseen. And some of us were never meant to know what watches us while we dream. My vision is starting to blur. The words on the screen are swimming. I can feel sleep pulling at me like gravity, inexorable and inescapable. I've done everything I can to stay awake, but the human body has limits. I can see them now, even with my eyes open, standing in the corners of my apartment, waiting. The thing in the corner that looks like my shadow is reaching toward me. I can't fight it anymore. If you've watched to this extent, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content.